The wide shot of Tim Roth in one hand holding the hooker's dead leg, in the other hand having the needle, and the girl and the kid and the fire. That was my Facebook cover photo for a very long time. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Alon.
And this is David, and today I finally watched Four Rooms.
So, about 7 years ago, well, more than that, but at least from what I can remember, 7 years ago, Four Rooms was available on Netflix. And I remember finding this out and being on a big Quentin Tarantino kick. So this was like all in the same week. Obviously, it's my first week of film school. I'm like 19 years old in college, and I'm watching Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Four Rooms, probably, back to back to back. And then I don't know, I guess it's just so like quote unquote experimental. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like what a cool thing to do. Is like four directors written but all the same like kind of cohesive story. And I was showing everyone, right? Now of course we come to this moment and it's not on Netflix anymore. And it's not so easy to just show people. So we have to like find it in
I'll
a
never, I'll never use Pluto TV again.
it's a streaming service that has every 10 minutes a commercial that you cannot skip through.
And then sometimes the commercial will like skip some of the movie for you and
And then
won't let you.
sometimes it'll restart your whole movie in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah.
This is not an ad
Nope.
for them. Um, but besides that, just to say, wasn't my favorite experience watching a Tarantino movie. Maybe my least. Um, but
Least.
but watching it the second time, there was some stuff I enjoyed in it. I obviously think it sort of gets better as it keeps going. I don't particularly like the first two that much. There are a couple things I like from it, but one thing I just read. I don't know if you read this. Did you know this was originally going to be called Five Rooms?
No.
Do you know who the fifth director was?
No.
Richard Linklater.
Oh man, that would have been great.
Yeah, and he pulled out. Not
Um
unlike Ted in the missing ingredient.
oh no, he just came in the bathtub. But the Richard Linklater's just what they just meet in the room, they get high. The story doesn't really go anywhere until it does. So
Just a hangout, just a 20-minute hangout, which I guess that would have brought this up to about 2 hours, so that would have made sense. Um, but yeah, I have never, not to disparage them, but I've never heard of the first two directors, although I think they're like friends with Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. And obviously, I
yeah,
don't think they had the same like career as those last two. They're not like horrible, but I think in order to do like an anthology like this, your short movie has to be real fucking good. And both of those first two are just kind of very simple and like
I th-
nothing interesting happens.
I think there's some merit to each one. But like I said, the last time I watched this before for the podcast was about 7 years ago, and then before that was about 2 years prior to that. So watching it now, there is some things I like a lot more about the second room. Like and things I've never noticed, and we'll get more into those later. But one of the things I did like about the first and second room is that like thematically they're much different from all right, you have to say this, right? All four rooms are very different from each other. Um but I actually don't have any problems with the first room. I actually think it's a good room. And I'm not just saying because we see some boobies in it, right? But I think
This
it's
podcast, we're 12 years old.
I don't think anyone's going to deny
The
that.
first one was my favorite.
No, it definitely wasn't my favorite, but I just don't think just because it's not about a subject we care about, like what witches and witches and Madonna, but I think it's still like a pretty good room.
You know, one thing that was very noticeable, just to address the nudity part of it at the top, is the two least famous actresses are the witches that get naked.
Right. Like you're not gonna go into this seeing Madonna naked.
Which is funny. Madonna's done nudity plenty, so but just it's just like when things like that happen in a movie, it's just like so obvious, and it's like sometimes why did you need to shoehorn the nudity into it? Like, and what's funny too is I don't think I've seen everything but Hateful Eight, and I don't think there's nudity in Tarantino movies. Like Jackie Brown has like the butt a little bit of Fonda, but for the most part, he avoids sex scenes and nudity. I can't
I'm
remember
pretty
Death Proof.
sure
Death Proof is the longest since I've seen it.
I'm pretty sure we see the entire frontal nudity of Jamie Foxx for like split second in Django.
I'm talking about female nudity.
Oh, yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we talked about before. He just sticks with the feet. Maybe we're just reruns now, and we've already discussed this. But in the only nudity in a Tarantino movie is the part he didn't even direct.
Right. Now, did you read at all about how they wrote this? Like, obviously, all four of them wrote it, and all four of them took turns directing each room, but they had to have some sort of writer's room esque situation where they were tying the Tim Roth character into all of these cohesively. It's not like Tim Roth took on a different character per room. He was the same dude throughout. And I think, one thing to address too is that out of all of Tim Roth's characters, he's probably the most boring, like general character. But I think that's done on purpose too, because he had to just he's a very passive character, right? Like all the things that happen in the room are done to him. So he just kind of has to move along through the hotel with all these things happening to him.
I think it's like my least favorite Tim Roth ever.
The stumbling, whispery,
the mannerisms, the wiggle as he walks, the way he talks, like the breathy, raspy, like whispering, like all of it just didn't work for me. But I will say that, and I agree with you. So Alexander Rockwell, who directed the second segment, he was the one who came up with this whole idea. And then I imagine there was like, as you said, they had to work together on like, well, this Roth is the main character, and then each of you can write your stories surrounding him. But yeah, the Roth, I think he starts out really annoying. He's the most annoying to me in the second, which is also coincides with my least favorite. And I think he gets better after that. I have problems with him in the third one as well. The fourth one with Tarantino is like my favorite one of his. But he's also just being a kiss ass because he's in, with a celebrity, right? So he's a little like not as annoying. But man, he was probably I like Tim Roth a lot, but he was probably my major problem with this movie. I just like was annoyed by him.
Well, one thing I was gonna say, and Taylor watched this with me, and she said anytime Tim Roth's character had a monologue, it was the worst part. It was the worst part of the movie. And I think he has the most to say in the second room, which then I was going to follow up with, which is probably why it's your least favorite, or at least one of the reasons.
Yeah, it's mostly just his mannerisms were just very over the top to me and like distracting, like not in a good way.
The title cards is where a director starts directing, and then when the next title card for the next room comes on, that's when the next director comes on, because I'm always in question who's directing the opening and who's directing like the in-betweens.
I think whenever a scene ends, I think the next director takes over. And the only reason I think that is because the Marissa Tomei and Kathy Griffin scene
Mm-hmm.
happens before the penthouse title card, but that dialogue is Tarantino. One like 100% Tarantino, right?
You
And
mean
it's like,
the one between Rodriguez and Tarantino? You think it's still directed by Tarantino?
yeah, yeah, where Marissa Tomei is talking to him on the phone, and then he's talking to Kathy Griffin. The Kathy Griffin dialogue is specifically just so Tarantino. Um,
Okay, Ted, yes, I understand. But you can't do this to me. I'm relying on you. The hotel is relying on you. Like that kind of like,
we were big in the 50s, 60s, and then we took obviously a dive in the 70s, but we're coming back in the 90s. Yeah, it's totally fucking Tarantino.
okay, yeah. What about the opening? Okay, so let's just start, right? Let's the opening where the old bellhop is introducing Tim Roth's, as the new bellhop into the thing. What did you think about that scene?
I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna like this.
Just right off the bat, just
I was
because
like,
of his character?
yeah. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. I did on second watch like how the guy warns him about everything that he's gonna confront tonight. Basically, he's like, avoid married arguments, kids, hookers, don't sleep with anyone. And then he also said night clerks though, which I don't, that part didn't track with me. But like the rest of it is just like the shit he had to deal with.
Right. Right. But I
Um,
mean, even in the opening, like title cards, not title cards, like the opening credits, the little cartoon thing, you saw a vague representation of each room too.
A little bit, yeah. I was trying to look for it, and it was super vague to me. But like, there were little kids, and there were naked women running around, which could have either been the witches or it could have been I guess the supposed hookers that run out of Tarantino's room in the beginning, which I didn't really understand.
That's
Um,
what I thought. I didn't get the submissive guy and the woman in like pantyhose thing, but whatever.
and then the snake. I guess the guy handling. Yeah, I don't know. That was the witches.
Snake was the witches. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. Um, But then it gets started with the honeymoon suite, and the first time I watched it, I was just so confused because everyone keeps going to the honeymoon suite. I was like, "What? I don't understand what's happening." And then Kiva with her line of like, "You're not my mother," and she's like, "Yes, I am." And then she's like, "Why are we sleeping together?" And it just like the cut to like the title,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Okay, what the fuck is going on there?" Did you recognize Kiva?
I know I was supposed to. I know I was like, oh, she's been in something, but I can't. So what? You're
The
gonna tell
answer,
me?
the answer is always justified. She's the Crowder's sister who's like the pretends to be a lawyer and like helps them out.
Oh, like the con artist.
Sort of. Yeah, she's the redhead in like the fifth season.
Uh, the
Did you
answer is
get to the
always
fifth
just
season?
no. I finished the whole. I finished the whole story.
Yeah, well, you should remember her. Anyway, yeah, and so then everyone goes up there. I like the Lily Taylor character when he runs into her and she's like, "I'm going to the honeymoon suite." And he's like, "Okay, it's right there." She's like, "I know where I'm going. I just wanted to tell you so you didn't feel bothered." And I was like, "All right, well, you just made that whole thing happen. Like he wasn't going to talk to you."
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Did you recognize the blonde? That's Madonna.
Oh, is it? Oh, is it?
Oh
What
yeah.
what
Hmm.
what have we seen her in?
We. uh. So her being in this, do you think it was more like a like Quentin's already come out from his big break, right? He's already at this point done like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. So pretty much if he's signed onto a project, anyone from that era is just gonna be like, yeah, I'm in, you know?
I guess it has to be, but then also like maybe there's some relationship with because I think Allison Anders, who directed that segment, I think she possibly had a movie like in Sundance, and that was why I think she was a little bit bigger around this time. Um, yeah, Gas Food Lodging, I think. Yeah, that was like in '92 that went to Sundance, and so I think that might be like why, but it was like so many. Like I said, the only two witches I didn't recognize were the ones that got naked. But first, like the lead witch besides Madonna was from Rain Man. Then you had Lily Taylor, and then you had Kiva, who was Alicia Witt from Justified that we just talked about. So it's like all these people. Then you got Marissa Tomei, Kathy Griffin, like all these people that were in this movie, and it's like I had never heard of it, and then you see it, you're like, what the hell happened here?
There's a big cameo towards the end of the movie. I don't want to talk about it right now, but we'll get there. But like that, yeah, I agree with you. It's such a niche movie. I feel like that I'm actually surprised you specifically haven't heard of this film because you're such a QT fan.
Well, I think when I'll go through his IMDb all the time, and I'll just be like, all right, well, that's one that no one's ever talked about, so that must be some weird thing that he did or something. I don't really need to focus on that. And then when you talked about it, and I see like it was a wide release movie, I believe. Yeah, it was just confounding to me. Back to the movie, they're all doing this like rhyming thing, and then Eva comes up, even though she's failed, and does a rhyme to explain that she's messed up. Like the rhymes are also so, but then the blonde woman's like is just fucking horrible.
Yes. Yeah. And the I think this is after she successfully slept with Tim Roth, but her use of jism is great. I'm just so glad that this was directed by a woman to not have any controversy in what happens in this scene.
People would have to see it for it to be controversial. But as soon as she explains that she doesn't have the sperm, you immediately know, like, okay, so she's about to fuck Tim Roth, right?
Yeah.
And just as a little bit of a getting fully ahead of ourselves, though, Tim Roth had a good night, right?
I mean,
he slept with the witch.
Great night.
He slept with a witch, a hot witch, and then he made $1,600.
Yeah, he didn't sleep with like the witch from The Witch. He slept with a hot witch. Like he slept with the witch from the hot witch from The Witch that like enticed the little kid to come into the room.
You just said like Anya Taylor-Joy. She was a witch.
No, do you remember like the witch from The Witch, the hot witch?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Before she turned into the old lady eating a baby. Yeah. We didn't need to talk about that.
After. So yeah, no, I think he did have a good night. Like the only thing bad is that he got stabbed with a potentially heroin needle.
Yeah, like he may have gotten AIDS. Also that little girl might have. And the second room's not great either. So
okay, let's talk about the second room because let's just finish up.
I'm not done with the first because when Roth walks in and they're like, we need you to make her smile, he walks over to her and starts taking off his jacket. I was like, oh wow, that's not great, buddy. And then he gives it to her and I was like, oh, that's real sweet. Like, this is a good guy.
Yeah. I think that's I think they put in this kind of like save the cat moments, right? That you start liking him as a character. But it's confusing too because he was warned about not sleeping with her, but he totally would have slept with her. There was no reason to do like the spell to like make UFOs and hearts like go around him and like, I don't know, drug him to sleep with her. Kind of rapey to me, but
yeah, well, but it was a woman doing it to a man, so it doesn't.
In the 90s.
Yeah, right. Like no one batted an eye. A couple of things that I thought were really like aged poorly were the hearts that appeared on the screen as they were like having sex, and then in the second one, just skipping ahead a little bit, as he's crawling out the window, like it pans out to the hotel like a huge away shot, and then an arrow points to him. You're like, oh, okay, already got it, and then it says Ted, and you're like, oh, okay, like all right, we're just so stupid that we can't figure out like what the point of this shot is.
I think it was just comedic purposes. I mean, I agree with you. I wasn't a fan of like the hearts while they were having sex. I think that was too distracting, but I'm like, I guess if you're going for like a laugh, fine.
It had
Because
like I
that
Dream. It had I Dream of Jeannie vibes to it, which is fine.
big
Or
time, big
no,
time.
Bewitched. Bewitched. I get
Both,
the maybe.
all of it.
I last thing, and I wrote this in the notes. So you've already saw this. Does Kiva just walks around with her nips taped 24/7, or is it just for this instance? Like why? That's one of those things I'm talking about where it's just so obvious. Like the nudity is planned in such a way that just doesn't make any logical sense, and so then it's just like, what's the point?
I mean, I don't know about the '90s, but I mean, women wear like boob tape and stuff if they don't want to wear a bra, but they don't want
It
their
looked like
freaking.
electrical. It looked like electrical tape.
It probably was the kind of boob tape that looked like electrical tape, but it was probably not.
They could just use pasties. I mean, I just it looked
Well, I mean,
stupid.
that's kind of what I think it is, kind of. But she was a goth, as they would say, right?
I guess.
Um, but the whole reason of them getting all the ingredients and having Tim Roth jizz in the bathtub was um, to bring back this witch that was turned to stone in that same exact room, however many years ago. And the way this room ends is the fact that they were successful in doing this. So,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
funny when I watched it the second time. I was like, it worked, and I was like, oh shit, did that really happen? I had like because it's so unimportant to the story, really, or the story just seems so unimportant.
And immediately after the fact that it did work, we're off to the next room right away.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, we don't get to see her powers. I did like the moving picture, which is like a Harry Potter kind of stole from. Like he's just looking at this picture, and it starts moving, and she's like this virginal witch was like into BDSM,
I love how he hands back the photo and he's like, it's not really for me to say, but I don't think she was a virgin.
right? Yeah. Room 404 or 409, depending on if you follow it. Which room was it? Do you think? What was the room
It
number?
was, I think, in the third room in Rodriguez's room. It's confirmed that it was 409.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
Before that,
and
you didn't know.
but the party, right? So initially, this was kind of the catalyst of this room was there was a big party happening in some room, and they were too drunk to know which room, but they wanted ice, so they called Tim Roth for some ice, and they said it was 404, and of course, on room 409, the nine is knocked off, so it's like very vague of what room this is. Later on in that room, when he's in the bathroom and he's being thrown up upon
Thrown up on.
anyways, that room is obviously a floor above, like directly a floor above. So wouldn't that be 509?
Yeah.
So they were way off.
They were they were drunk or stoned or something. Yeah. So he makes it to room 409, and like I said, this is where I find him the most annoying. I normally like the guy who plays the husband in most things I
Siegfried.
see him. Yeah,
Siegfried, yeah.
Siegfried's not his real name.
His
Um,
character name.
David Proval. He's normally in like a lot of like Italian American roles. Obviously,
Yeah.
he can play that. But um, some parts of this I thought were funny. Is like you know, at first you're confused, right? Because you think this is like a mistaken identity thing, and then you realize like whoever walked through that door was just going to be thrown into this like role playing exercise that they had going on. Although
And also named Ted.
but I still don't know what the point of this was. Was it role playing? Because the wife was like, "Oh, he just does this. You won't get hurt, whatever." But then later on, when she's like, "I'll get his pills," and then he pops back up, he's like, "Ah, this was a test." And so it's like, what? I don't know what the fuck this was. And then she leaves that room later to go hang out in the penthouse. So, and also they found her by the pool. Was she at the pool at like 11 o'clock at night?
Yes. And I guess all that happened while he was in the third room. But um, there's a moment in the second room where the phone rings and he picks up the phone and he's like, "We don't have any goddamn needles. We just have a big fucking gun." My question is that, and it happened too, where it's like the party dude gets lost and he goes into the room after Tim Roth finally gets out of the room, and it kind of plays over again. Is that, are we to believe that the whole hotel is kind of like the hotel from the Tower of Terror? Like it's in a Twilight Zone-esque time loop thing? At least that room is, right?
So wait, you're saying he said to the I only remember it happening in the scene with the little girl where she calls and he says, "No, we don't have needles. We only have big fucking guns." But he says that in the second scene too.
Yeah, we only hear from his side of the phone conversation, and it seems random until the little girl in this third room calls it.
Well, then I think we're just supposed to believe that it happened at the same time. That he was going back and forth between the rooms.
Oh.
She calls him about the needle. She calls the front desk and tells him about the needle, and he's like, "Hey, do you want the milk and cookies? I'll bring you milk and cookies." And then from there, he gets the call from the guys with the ice, goes up, and then by the time he comes back, he then brings them milk and cookies, and the end of 309 happens, the third story.
Okay, well, what are the odds of them knowing his name is Theodore?
No, I think that's just a coincidence.
But then the guy who goes into the room, his name is Theodore.
Yeah, I think because he was brought in for like the role playing, they probably paid him. So it just so happens that the guy they paid to do the role playing has the same name as the bellhop.
That was the guy who called for ice.
No, it wasn't.
It was, well, there were two guys on the phone who called
Yeah,
for
I don't
ice.
think-
One threw up on him, and the other one ended up being the guy.
Maybe
You don't think
but
so? No?
It might have been, but either way, yeah. I mean, so they wrote a coincidental story. Like you're just proving my point.
I guess. I actually I looked at it. I don't know why I decided to look at things in a more complicated light than which it already is, because I decided to look at it as like a time loop room, and instead of seeing like those stories were just happening coincidentally. So
Well, they did say like this was like a based off like a Hitchcock type thing, right? At least the fourth story, right? So, you know, makes sense, right? Twilight Zone esque ish.
yeah. Um are yeah, well, I just want to talk. I'm kind of done with the second room. I just want to talk about one more thing about it, is that why does he go into the bathroom?
Who? The husband?
Tim Roth.
Oh, to find the pills. The guy
But then
fakes a heart.
he can't, and he gives up and he tries to climb out a window.
Tries to climb out a window with no ladder, which I guess you could just say maybe he doesn't know that because it's his first night. Um, but then, as he's out there and gets thrown up on, he's just like screaming for help. Like, who the fuck is gonna help you out there?
Also, with the arrow pointing, and that's supposed to be room 409, that seems way higher than just the fourth floor, right?
It super high. Yeah, and then also he. The only thing I want to talk about is like, why as a guy's got a gun pointed at your head. Which, by the way, there was like the red dot on it, which made me think like it looked really fake. But maybe some real guns have the red dot for the sight on it. I don't know.
Oh,
It
it's
looked
for
like
the site.
I know. I knew it. Thank you a lot. I know how guns work, but I know it's for the sight. But just like it looked less red, more orange. Like you know how like the tips of fake guns have orange on them. Um, but why does he give this whole speech about he doesn't want to be called Theodore, he wants to be called Ted to a dude who's got a gun to his head, right? But then the speech works, and then he makes out with him. And
It's
then
just
the wife,
it's just kind of like the sexual role playing fantasy that's like, I don't know, that he just, yeah.
the one thing I like is the wife at the end's like, you know, how are you gonna fuck me and then do this to my husband? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, with your huge cock over there. He's like, he's got a huge cock. Let me see it.
I think that's my favorite part. I think that's a huge redemption of the whole room is her listing all the ways to say penis.
I actually hated that part of it because it was like none of them were very good, and also like, but the part right before it I enjoyed.
Um, and then he slow motion runs out of the room just for another guy to meet his fate. Um, yeah. And then we cut to Antonio Banderas, who I think is awesome.
You put a little flavor on that, Antonio.
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, he's definitely a little over the top, but it worked more for me the second time. I feel like knowing what I was getting into with him and his character, like Roth was a little less annoying the second time too. Um, yeah, definitely over the top. I was trying to figure out his wife kept calling them your kids, which is like a thing you do sometimes when your kids are acting up. You tell your spouse like, oh, your kids are being brats today or whatever. But I mean, like they looked like the person who cast those got fucking half Asian, half Latin babies. They
Yes.
both like fit perfectly.
Yes, perfectly. And especially when he was combing out the kid's hair, he was like, you have your mother's hair, and he seems like disgusted by it. He's like, you can't do anything with it. But the kid looks more Latin than Asian. But then the girl looks like a perfect mix between the two.
Right.
Yeah, the casting was phenomenal on that part.
I have a couple questions about this though. One, like Roth's motivation, because he takes Antonio's like, do you want how would you like $500? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, well, what about 300? And then they haggle and he gives him 500, right? But then he's like, oh, I want them to bed before midnight. And Roth is like, do you want me to wake them up for the countdown? It's like, well, why would you ask that? And then you're like an asshole to these little kids like the rest of the time, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why are you like, oh, should I wake them up for the countdown?
To be fair, I don't think he realized what kind of shitlins they are until they are, right? Like he didn't come off rude, but then they started it.
Shitlins, that's a new one for me. Then I noticed when I watched it the second time too, there's only one bed in this room.
I noticed that too, yes.
Do you also think that Robert Rodriguez was doing like an homage to Quentin Tarantino's love of feet? With the little kids?
Here's the thing, right? It's like at times I forgot that this was directed by him, and I thought it was just a Quentin Tarantino thing. And then I was like, wait, why is Rodriguez doing it this way? You got to think of like From Dusk Till Dawn too. That was mainly directed by Robert Rodriguez, but that showed a lot of feet in that one too.
Well, he's like, I want alcohol poured from Salma Hayek's foot into my mouth. Make it happen.
Fun fact is that, did you know that the half naked lady on the television was Salma Hayek?
I did. Apparently, they like agreed to not show her face, but you could see her face a little bit. And what's funny is they needed that like last minute, and she agreed to do it. And then because she agreed to do it, that's why they wrote the From Dusk Till Dawn part for her.
That's cool.
So, yeah. So this little girl's a big fucking brat is also a big thing. Like she's like, no, we paid you $500. My dad said you'll do anything we ask for. And then she's like, there's naked ladies on the TV. That's not a naked lady, all right? You little bitch. Okay, that's just a woman in a bikini. So shut the fuck up. Let your little brother watch the woman in the bikini. So then she's like making calls, and then she kicks him in the fucking face. Not a good person.
I don't know what you're talking about. These are all stellar acts.
Why is the little kid sucking his own toe in the corner?
Because little kids are gross. You have 2 of them. You should know this.
The oldest one is 2. That kid's like 10 or 11.
Yeah, get ready. get ready.
That's an immediate timeout.
Little kids are gross, right? Like, how did she get the needle? Where the hell did she find this needle? And then why did she keep like poking it and like just nonchalantly tossing it around?
Well, she gets it from the bedside table, which the cleaning crew here is not good. So Roth comes back up. He had promised them milk and cookies and brings stale saltines and milk.
To be fair, on that tray was a jar of jam.
Oh, well, that makes it all the better. And then he fucking puts Vicks on their eyes so they can't open them?
Well, I was going to say, I love the fact that when she like gets up and like daredevils her way to the bathroom, wipes it off, and then he's like on the phone with her, and he's like, could you see it? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, ha, you can't, because you have Vicks on your eyes. She goes, I wiped it off. You never thought about wiping it off when it happened to you?
Yeah, that part's great. Um, so yeah, you just uh, she wiped it off, and then they keep smelling something this whole time. They thought it was their feet. It turns out it was a dead hooker in the bed, and all of
When
this
you
plays
say it
out
out loud, it's just even funnier.
like some guy took the time to cut into the like not the mattress but the part underneath it. The words escaping me right now.
The
Um,
yeah,
and
the
then
box
puts
spring.
the box spring. There we are. And then
Mm.
puts it back over, right? Puts the bed back over it and just leaves it there. Like it's all good. I will say the shot of him first seeing the dead hooker and just throwing up out of his mouth like projectile vomiting. This all sets up what I think is the very like a funny last visual of like he calls the police and keeps screaming, "There's a dead whore," and the little girl's like, "Don't call her that," which is also like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's a dead whore. It's very clearly a dead whore. Like, look at the way, like, get out of here, kid. So she fucking stabs him with the needle. He's then like holding the dead hooker. He slaps the cigarette out of the kid in the bottle. So there's a fire, and Antonio Banderas walks in. Which, by the way, I guess we're supposed to. He's like a mafia boss, is what we're supposed to get. Like he's a bad guy, although that's not really.
How are we supposed to get that?
The little girl's like, "Oh, my dad. If you don't fix this right now, my daddy's gonna come home and put your body right next to this one."
Oh, you just reminded me of my favorite line, where she calls the operator. He picks up, and she's like, "There's a dead body in the bed," and he's like, "No, but if I have to go up there one more time, there's about to be two. You." And she hangs up on him before he can say you. It's just so funny.
But the last visual, and Antonio Banderas walks in and like sees everything, and he's like, "So did they misbehave?" Like he's not even mad. But one thing I don't understand is like Roth was paid like $500, and he just seems to be so nonchalant about this whole thing. Like, if someone gave me, there's nothing going on at that hotel. If someone gave me 500, I think I would, I'd take care of those kids. I'd find them some cookies.
Um, the wide shot of Tim Roth in one hand holding the hooker's dead leg, in the other hand having the needle, and the girl and the kid and the fire. That was my Facebook cover photo for a very long time.
Oh, nice, good.
Yeah,
And everyone's
thanks.
everyone's like, I have no idea what the fuck that is.
No one ever got the reference.
Yeah. So we get the little inner thing where interstitial story, I guess I could call it. I don't know if interstitial is the right word. So Marissa Tomei answers the phone when Tim Roth calls, and they have this long conversation, only to find out that she's not the person he needs to talk to. And then Kathy Griffin gets on there, which normally she really annoys me, but she was fine in this. At the
Because she,
very end, though,
because she was given Quentin dialogue.
right? Yeah, she wasn't doing her own thing. Yeah, but then at the very end, she's like, the entire staff of the hotel is begging you. And I was like, what fucking staff? There's no one else.
It's just
He's
her.
the only one there. We've been told he's the only one there.
Yeah.
And then we get to the man from Hollywood.
So before the man from Hollywood, I just want to just bring up the logical question: is that fire is still going on in that room, right?
I'm sure they dunked some water on it.
More alcohol. Yeah. So this is probably the misbehaviors is definitely probably my favorite room. But very second close comes the man from Hollywood. And it's just because Quentin can carry a fucking scene practically by himself.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like some of his acting in it. I thought I've seen him in, he's done other stuff where Pulp Fiction obviously comes to mind that I think he was pretty decent in. In this, I was just like, yeah.
Well, this scene is very reminiscent of his Pulp Fiction scene.
It's different for me. But the thing that like annoyed me the most of it was when he came over. He's like, I asked you how the tasty beverage was. Can you tell me how the tasty? Let's try this again. How'd you like the tasty beverage? Fucking good, sir. He like really lays Tim Roth really lays like the Brit on him for that second part.
When you're having champagne, you say you're drinking champagne, but when you're drinking Cristal, you say you're drinking fucking Cristal.
Yeah. And then the whole like Bruce Willis is like, oh, can I take over? And he's like, Oh, I second that motion. He's like, that matter is closed.
So yeah, Bruce Willis, right? Would you? Yeah, I bet you he wasn't credited at all in this film.
Do you know why?
No, I don't know why.
So he took the role for free, which violates SAG rules, and they told him and he did it, for QT because he's friends with them, and Pulp Fiction was, huge for his career. So he told, SAG told him the only way they wouldn't sue him is if he remained uncredited, which is really like, I get the role of SAG to prevent, directors from taking advantage of people, but like
Yeah,
fucking Bruce Willis, like if Bruce Willis wanted to do this, like, it's just
yeah.
that part's kind of stupid to me.
Plus, you can pay a minimum depending on like the actors. If you are a favor, you could pay like 225. I don't know how much it was in the 90s, but I think you can pay like a couple grand to have them in your movie, and it would still fit SAG limitations. But whatever. Um, yeah, that whole scene and the like leading up to the whole point, the climax of the scene and everything like that. I It was one of the most like entertaining and for so the whole thing is off of the Alfred Hitchcock episode with Jerry Lewis who has to
No,
light a
no,
lighter.
Peter Lorre and
What?
Steve McQueen.
Why
The
did I
Jerry
think
Lewis,
Jerry?
the Jerry Lewis thing was all about the movie The Bellhop, and I love that. I love when I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So when QT goes like old Hollywood stuff, and he explains how like Jerry Lewis couldn't get any respect in the U.S. but the French loved him, and so the Bellhop movie, like I loved all that. But they called it The Man from Rio, which was like an Alfred Hitchcock TV thing, starring Peter Lorre and Steve McQueen. But I guess it was actually
Okay,
called The
okay.
Man. It was called The Man from the South. And yeah, there was a bet that he couldn't light his lighter 10 times in a row.
And if he did, he would win a car. I love Chester's explanation about how he needs him to do it because there's a high possibility of him chickening out. And if he chickens out, then um, he loses. He's like, I am as emotionally attached to my car as he's physically attached to his finger.
Yeah, the monologue for the 1 minute when he's like, when all the way starting with like, hey, you can leave right now, but if you leave 1 minute from now, you'll be $100 richer. And then he gets him to sit down, and he's like, the others start talking. He's like, hey, I'm the fucking closer here, right? And he
Yeah.
just goes through this whole spiel, and then finally he's like, we have these chances to make these memories in our life. And 40 years from now, do you remember that you helped us with this, or do you want to just never remember this, right? And he's like, fine, I'll do it. There's a couple cool things in this. Like one, the red Chevy Chevelle was actually QT's car, and it's the one that was in Pulp Fiction. And I think I
Oh.
remember when we did Kill Bill that like that car got stolen for a little bit, and he got it back.
I th- okay. I thought we talked about the pussy wagon.
Very clearly, we talked about that, but
I didn't think. How funny would it be if they were talking about the pussy wagon instead of the red Chevy?
and he's like, Paul Calderon's like, I just have to have that car.
um, yeah, one thing we kind of glossed over, and I want to get to the ending, but the same woman from
Yeah,
room
Angela.
two is Angela is in this room, and like you said, meeting her by the pool doesn't quite make sense unless they were going for a night swim. But she seems way cozy in this penthouse suite, and also the penthouse suite is weird, right? It's just this huge room with like a bedroom off to the side.
Which one of them did Angela sleep with?
All three.
Nah, I don't think Bruce. Bruce was too busy.
Oh, talking to his wife. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think she probably had sex with Chester. He's the celebrity. And at one point, Norman calls her a bitch, and he's like, "You're the one sucking his dick. Who's the bitch?" I was like, "Holy fuck! Like, what happened to this? What did we miss?"
Yeah, something happened in the penthouse. Did you like the just like the layout of the penthouse? Is one side is the bar, the other side are like four naked dude statues, and then it's just a huge room with like two couches.
weird fucking room, like a weird space.
It reminded me of. Have you ever seen Twin Peaks?
I have not. We've talked about that.
It's they go into this like weird dream place, and it's just like a red room. It reminded me kind of something like that out of like a, I don't know, a mind fever dream.
So the reason that this one is my favorite is I love the way it ends. It's like my favorite thing Tim Roth does, of where they pan in on the lighter and the first time he fucking can't do it. And he just immediately chops his fucking finger off and then with the other hand grabs all the cash and then just starts wiggling his ass as he's counting it out the door. And I love too that he knows they have to go to the hospital and he takes the elevator first.
But it's perfect timing too, because like usually penthouse elevators go to a secondary floor and then there's a switch over to the main elevator, right? Sometimes in old timey hotels there's. Now I think you just need a room key and you get to that extra floor. But my favorite part is the credits rolling, the camera just stable right there, and then you see them just fucking scrambling all over the place to get, and they drop the ice bucket and everything like that.
I love hearing all of them talking at one time. You can barely make any of it out, but then Bruce Willis like calling the doctor that he had lined up, and he's like, "What the fuck do you mean he's in plastic surgery? It's 6:30 in the morning. What the fuck?"
Oh, it's 6:30 in the morning. That fucking okay. So that means the fireworks were going off at the end of of Robert Rodriguez's thing. So 6.5 hours went by between then and then.
The timing doesn't make sense.
And then Kathy Griffin is like, "Oh yeah, you can go home, but you got to take care of Chester in the penthouse." It's like, bitch, it's 6:30 in the morning. I'm going home.
Yeah. The timing's all weird on that. So, it doesn't make sense really, honestly.
So I liked it. It's actually one of my favorite things that Quentin has done because it's just so weird. But I know you have your reserves. What's your final thoughts on the whole thing?
I think so. I've watched a good amount of like anthology movies, right? Like last year I was trying to watch everything Bong Joon-ho has done, right? And so I watched he was a part of an anthology movie. And each of those work to varying degrees, right? Because it's just like such a compact thing. I enjoy listening to like Quentin Tarantino dialogue, so like that one really worked for me. Mm-hmm. And I think the Misbehaviors one worked as well. Like overall, I'm glad I watched it, but no, like I love everything he's done. So like this is probably will be my least favorite thing once I watch The Hateful Eight. So
you never know. There's still time.
After we do The Hateful Eight, we should have our rankings ready for that episode, just so we can see how fucking batshit yours are, where you put Four Rooms like above Pulp Fiction or something stupid.
I'm not going to put it above Pulp Fiction, but Pulp Fiction is not going to be number one for me. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, well, we'll find out.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Alon.
And this is David. And today I finally watched Four Rooms.